Okay, hello everyone. Today I'm gonna cover setting up Spark on AWS using sparklyr. Sparklyr is the Spark library for R. So if you prefer to work with R instead of Python, you can refer to this video to set up sparklyr on AWS. So there are a lot of useful material on PySpark and Python, and they're set up on AWS. While I couldn't really find a very useful material for setting up Sparkly R, that's why I'm creating this video. So this document from RStudio was the best I could find. So if you search this part on Google, you should be able to find this document. It's really helpful. It has some inconsistencies, but I think this document is the main source of my video today. So the first thing you need to do is to set up an AWS account. So once you set up the AWS account, you can create an EMR cluster. Basically, EMR stands for Elastic MapReduce. So you need to create this EMR cluster on AWS so that you can connect to that and set up Spark. In order to do that, go to AWS, go to Services, and go to EMR. But before that, there are two things that needs to be set up. First is that you need to have a key pair in order to be able to connect to the EMR cluster that you're going to build. So when setting up EMR cluster, it requires you to tell AWS what key pairs you're going to use. Because of that, you need to set up a key pair as the first step. The second step would be to change the security setting of the key pair. And also you need to have a security group set up on AWS. So let's go through these steps first. In order to set up a key pair, go to Services, go to EC2, which stands for Elastic Cloud Computing, and then come down here on the left menu to the key pairs. Now, if you see, I have created this key pair before, and I named it EMR key pair, but creating a new one is really easy. So just click and create key pair, give it a name, keep it as PEM, because that's the one we need to SSH using terminal, and just click create key pair. Once you do that, a key pair is downloaded on your computer. So I've already downloaded the key pair and I have it on my machine. So you see in my directory, so I'm connected to the Hadoop cluster. Let me. Okay. So if you see my directory, you can see that I have the EMR key pair. So I'm going through the list of items that we need to do, and I have the list here. So we have created a key pair. Now we need to change the security setting on the key pair. In order to do that, you need this command. Basically, you're telling the terminal that you need to change the security access of this key pair, and in order for it not to be public. So just type chmod 400 and the name of the key pair and run it. So the fourth item. This is really important. I really had issues with this part. So when you are setting up an EMR cluster, you need to let AWS know what security group you're going to use. So when you're creating the cluster, the security groups needs to have restricted inbound access. So all ports needs to be closed except port 22 for SSH. So you need to make sure you have a security group that only has port 22 open. How to do that? Go to, again, Services, go to EC2. We've covered key pairs. Now go to security groups. Again, it's as easy as creating a security group. Just give it a name, give it a description. This is, you can give whatever you want for the description. Keep this part as is. Add a rule for inbound. Let me type something here just for it. Okay, for it to let me add rule. Here you need to choose SSH. It automatically says port 22, and here just say my IP. That's it. And for outbound rule, you can keep it as is and just click on create security group. Okay, I have already have my security groups. So now that you set up the security group and you downloaded the keeper, you can create your EMR cluster. How? This time go to services. Instead of going to EC2, go to this EMR. Okay, you see I have all these clusters that are terminated. The reason was the security group. So every time, since my security group was not fine, and I didn't know about this restriction of port 22, AWS forced my clusters to be terminated. So now I have this cluster. Now how to create a new cluster? Just create cluster. Just click on create cluster. On this part, make sure you go to advanced options. Why? Because we need to set up Spark on this cluster, and the default option doesn't have Spark. So click on go to advanced options. On this part, make sure you click on Spark. The rest, you can leave it as is. Go to the next part. Here, you can let AWS know about the core settings that you want. So you need one master node and a couple of core nodes. In this reference document that I told you about, they recommend having one core node, one master node, and two slave nodes. So for this test, you can just go like that, or you can choose whatever you want. This part is the setup of the cluster type. You can change the storage here. So just click here. You can choose any of the core types that you want, and you can click here, change this 100 to 80 or whatever. And I personally created my cluster using one master node with M3 X large and 80 gigabytes. And here, two core nodes with one M3X large and 80 gigabytes. These are, again, what is recommended in this document. So once you do that, click on Next. Here, you can just change the name of the cluster if you want. The rest, you can keep them as is. Go Next. Okay, here, this is the reason why we had to set up the key pair and also the security group. This part, choose the key pairs that you created. Now click on EMR key pair or whatever key pair that you just created. And here on EC2 security groups, make sure you choose the security group that only has the SSH port open for both master and core and task. And then just click on create cluster. So this takes some time, around 15 minutes for your cluster to set up. That's why I already have a cluster and I'm going to use the cluster that I created before, which is this one. When the cluster gets ready, you would see waiting. When it's just being created, this would be starting. So once your cluster goes to waiting status, it's ready. Now, going back to our list, so we covered security group, we created the EMR cluster. Now we want to SSH into our cluster. So in order to do that, if you come to your AWS console, and here you see that they have a link for SSH. So if you click on that, and you just need to copy this part into your terminal in order to SSH into this cluster. The only part you need to change is that part, this part. Basically, it's saying SSH -I and the address of the key pair. So it is automatically assumes that the key pair is in your home directory. If you have it somewhere else, then you need to give the address for your key pair. Okay, let's come here. I want to SSH. I have my SSH command here. So let me copy this part. Okay. Once you copy this SSH command on your command line, you would be able to connect to your EMR cluster. And it welcomes you by this EMR sign. So now we are connected to this EMR cluster. So in order to set up Spark, we need to do, and also set up RStudio there, we need to install a couple of things on this EMR cluster. So let me go back here. We covered this part. Now we want to update Yum, which is the package manager, and we want to install libcurl for DevTools, and also install RStudio server. So let's go here. First do sudo yum update. Yes. We are basically updating the package manager on the cluster. Let's give it some time to finish setting up. Okay. Now going back here, we also need this. Let me copy it. Yes. So these are the setup for requirements for RStudio. Now, again, going back here, we also want this part. Okay. I think it didn't. Let's go back here. Let me zoom. Okay, let's and then copy all this. What's wrong? Okay, so I was typing it wrong. Now that we also have that, the last part, this one, again, let me copy this. And paste it here. Yes. So now once this finishes, we have all the requirements for RStudio. Okay, great. Now we want to create a user for RStudio. Now I'm at part 8. Let's do sudo user add -m and the name of the user that you want to create. Let's keep it as rstudio-user. Now we want to set a password for that user. Say sudo password. Where was I? Again, a name of the user we created, rstudio-user. Click. What? Sorry, pass wd. Okay, just give a password that you want. Okay, let me do that again. Okay, password do not match. I think I had an issue with the first password. Oh, I see. I'm trying to set the password as the username. Apparently it doesn't let me do that. So let me set a new password. Okay. Now that we have the RStudio user, let's go here. We covered this part. Now we want to create a directory for this user on HDFS. So we need to say Hadoop file system dash make directory. For instance, in user rstudio dash user. Okay, now that we created this directory for this user, we need to set the security for this user. So again, Hadoop fs chmod. Remember chmod before on chmod 400 that we used to change access to the keeper that we downloaded. Okay. Now the security setting is also set for this user. Now we want to switch to this user that we just created. So we say su switch user. and then the name of this user. It's asking for the password. Okay, authentication failed. Switch user again. I don't know why I had issue with this password. Okay. Now we are connected as this RStudio user that we just created. Now the next step for us is to download some test data in order to run some test analysis on this data. We want to download the data. We want to create a Hive table for that data. And then we want to access that data through RStudio from web. So now going back here. Oops. We covered so far up to here. Now we want to download this data set. So this is an online data set available. So let's copy this part. Okay, the data is downloaded. Now that the data is downloaded, we want to copy the data into HDFS. So we say Hadoop file system make directory. So we are creating a directory in Hadoop file system for this data first. So we say Hadoop file system make directory. Now let's do it in our user, RStudio user. The name of the dataset is airlines, so let's say airlines. Okay. Now that we created a directory for that, we want to put the data that we just downloaded into this Hadoop file system. So we say Hadoop, and I'm always typing these commands from the right part of my tmux. So Hadoop fs-put, which basically puts something from the first directory to the second directory. Now we downloaded the data into temp airlines.csv. User. Great. So, okay, we downloaded the data. We moved that to our user on HDFS. Now, we want to convert this data into Hive tables. For this part, first type Hive. Now, where I am, I'm at step, where is Hive? Yeah, I'm at step 11. So just type Hive. Now we should connect to Hive. Just when you're in Hive, remember that all the commands need to end with semicolon. If you don't put that semicolon, you would get lost. So now that we are in Hive, we want to first create a table based on the schema of the data that we downloaded, and then we want to load that with the data that we downloaded. So let me go to my right part. We created Hive. Now we want to we connected to Hive. Now we want to create the table. So let me copy this part. until here. Okay, we go here, we paste it. Nice. Now the table is created in Hive. Now let's go back here. Now we want to load the table, this part. Okay. Nice. So the data is now added to the table that we created in Hive. Now the cluster setup is ready. The data is on the cluster. Now we wanna, and we also installed RStudio and the requirement for RStudio. Now the next part and the last part I'm gonna cover is to use your browser to connect this cluster and connect to RStudio web, so that using your web, you can develop in RStudio, develop your codes in RStudio. Now, in order to do that, you need a Foxy proxy. So let me tell you where you can find this information. In your EMR, AWS account, this part, EMR console, if you see this part, it's showing you how to enable web connection. Now, if you click on that, you would see that for Mac, you first need to SSH tunnel into the cluster, and then you need to do this configuration. So let's first do the configuration. It says you need to download and install Foxy proxy, but the link that they provide, it goes here, which doesn't, it's really hard to find what you need to download. So in order to know what you need to do, just click on learn more, and now configure Foxy proxy. This link is the correct link. If you go here, I'm explaining how to do it in Chrome. If you're using other browsers, then go back. Good luck on finding how to set up on other browsers. So, but on Chrome, basically this is it. You need to install this extension to your Chrome. I already have it. It's as easy as clicking on this part. Since I already have it, it's not showing add to Chrome. If you don't have it, just click on add to Chrome. And that's it. You would have Foxy proxy. Getting back here, so you need to have Foxy proxy. Then you need to have a file named Foxy proxy setting, and then also that includes this text. So basically, you need to create a file named foxyproxy-setting.xml, and you need to copy this into that file. So let's do that. Okay, first I need to disconnect from my Hive and disconnect from the EMR cluster, because basically now this part is on my local machine. I'm trying to set up a proxy on my local machine so that I can connect to this EMR cluster using web. The first part, quit. I first want to quit from Hive. Don't forget to put semicolon. Now I'm in the terminal of the cluster. If you want to disconnect from the cluster, just type exit. Okay, now no, I'm not on my local machine. I was in our user. Okay, exit. Okay, now I'm in my local machine. So now I need to create that file named foxy-proxy-setting. So touch foxy proxy-setting .xml. Okay, now that you created that file, you need to copy whatever that was on the text in that AWS console into this file. So let's use vim to open the file. Okay, now let's go here we need to copy all this. Let's go back here. Let's go to insert mode, paste this, get out of escape mode. And okay, people joke on how to exit Vim. You need to type colon W right Q quit. Okay, now we have this Foxy proxy setting file ready. If you go back here, once you have this, you need to go to your Foxy proxy, go to options, go to import export, click on this part import, choose file, choose the thing that we just created, Foxy proxy setting.xml, and click on add. Okay, after that, make sure on this part you choose use proxies based on their redefined pattern and properties. Sorry, priorities. Okay, once you have this, you can close Foxy proxy. Let's go back here. Okay, we did this. Now the last part. We want to, now that we have the Foxy proxy set up, we can basically connect to our EMR cluster. How? In this part now we need to do the SSH tunnel. So I have it here. Let me go back here. Let me go. This part, SSH tunnel. I basically need to copy this. And where am I getting this SSH command? Let me go back here to show you. This is the SSH command. Again, you need to change the address for key pair here. I already have that one set here. Now I want to copy this. I go to this window. I want to paste it. What happened? Okay. Yes, sorry, I didn't do SSH, I did SH. Okay, now we are connected to the EMR cluster using SSH, but this time we used SSH tunnel. Basically, we said connect 8157 ports of my local machine to this cluster. And in the Foxy proxy, we basically told the proxy to listen on this 8157. Now that we have the Foxy proxy set up and we have connected to the EMR cluster using SSH tunnel, we can basically use web to connect to this server. And this is basically explained on this part, but it was some parts of it were hard to follow, so you can do as I just did. Okay, now just copy your public DNS into a new tab, colon, you want to say the port number. We need port 8787 for RStudio. Okay, now we are connected to RStudio on the EMR cluster using web. So put the username that you created, put the password that you used, and sign in. Okay, now you're in RStudio on your EMR cluster using web. And you also have Spark on this RStudio.